It's the 19th of November, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. The Battle of the Empires continued throughout the weekend, which is forming a new global structure that will change the world for the better. Global military and intelligence agencies are changing rapidly after the fall of the deep state's empire. Will the people involved change too, or be left in the dust? And the U.S. government reopened last week, at least until January 30th. They used the Epstein files to blackmail wealthy Middle Eastern families for donations.
Tired before the day begins? NAD Plus levels drop 50% after 40. NAD Plus helps your cells bounce back fast. Most supplements give precursors. NAD Plus skips the breakdown, delivering direct, bioavailable power. Support your energy, metabolism, sleep, and stress levels at the cellular level. Join the NAD Plus revolution. Start your journey to a healthier you. Subscribe today.
Well, it's the 19th of November, and been a crazy time, so I apologize for not getting as many reports out as I hope to every week. It might be a little bit bumpy through the end of the month, but I think that we should be hopefully in the clear pretty soon. And, you know, they're not taking things too lightly over there in crazy land as far as the deep state is concerned, or, well, now we're calling them something else. We'll talk about that in a minute. But a little bit of regular news to kind of clean up before we get into what's really going on in the world. So the U.S. government did finally reopen last week. Looks like they are reopened officially until January 30th, or until they can figure something else out. The way that they did that is they are using the Epstein files. And we've talked about this before, that the Epstein files are, you know, they've been out there all over the government for a long time. Everybody knows who went to and fro the island. And when I say the government, I'm not just talking about the U.S. government. Everybody, you know, all of these officials from all over the world traveled to that island for many reasons. One of them is well known as far as, you know, young boys and young girls being made available to the elite around the world. That's part of it. A lot of rituals also happened on those islands, and, you know, they use them as far as, well, let's call it blackmail. And by blackmailing, they pull them out whenever they feel the need to get some government or some elite or some royal family somewhere to do something for them. And in this case, it was to fund and keep the government going in the United States. So what happens in the United States happens everywhere, because it's been this way for a long time now. And well, they did just that. They approached a lot of folks around the world, oil tycoons and whatnot from the Middle East, and used these files as to blackmail them into funding the U.S. government, which they did get quite a bit of money from these folks. And now everything is back underneath the, let's just say, they're in the non-exposure category at this point. But it worked out so well for them that they are continuing to threaten the exposure of the files. They're talking about it on Twitter, behind the scenes in the U.S. government. They're talking about the Epstein files and that it's being done by the alliance to expose the pedophiles. And, you know, they're also talking about exposure of human trafficking in Venezuela for that very same reason. They're losing control of their people that they have in varying countries around the world, and they're trying to manipulate these people using these files. So Are they all of a sudden trying to do something good for children around the world or young men and women? No, absolutely not. This has got nothing to do with that. It's got nothing to do with public disclosure or trying to tell you that they're taking out the bad people. That's what they'll tell you in the alt media, but it's all baloney. It's all for blackmail, 100%, to get what they need and what they want, not only to keep the government running, but also to fund black ops and other things they're trying to do. Now, this isn't going to hold up for very long, and quite frankly, from my standpoint, there's a lot of information in the files, but is it going to make the world a better place with what they're doing? Absolutely not. Is it going to stop human trafficking? No, not in any way, shape, or form. Why? Because the same people that are promoting these files are also the people that profited from human trafficking for centuries. So I don't really see that being a positive in any way. And I know many people are interested in that. And I'm not saying that exposure wouldn't do anything, but it's certainly not going to stop it because it's the same people who actually run those trafficking rings. Now, as far as the government is concerned, I'm not just talking about U.S. government. I'm talking about governments in totality. But in this particular case, a lot of what's happening in the world is being spearheaded by secret space program Trump operatives. And they've made a lot of promises around the world of, not only other operatives, but, also to other countries stating that they were going to have some funds available. And by funds, we're talking trillions among trillions of dollars. And that did not happen as planned. I know that's a total shocker because that's never happened before. But it's kind of left them a little bit in the hot seat. And, the global power centers of the world, are kind of like hot potatoes at this point. They're tossing them around from location to location, China, US, Russia, and this kind of seems like where the balls are rotating, mainly because they were former power centers of varying empires. So in an effort to try to figure out a solution to this little untenuous situation that they found themselves in, an old letter that I wrote a long time ago, back in January of 2018, has resurfaced. Inquiries are being made, and they're calling us, trying to see if they can, quote unquote, reopen negotiations regarding this particular letter. So I did pull up an old copy of the letter. We've got it up here on the screen. The letter basically states, at one point in time, back in 2018, I thought that Trump was a good guy. I also thought that he was going to do some good things for the government. And it was all about, at that time, taking out the Rothschilds and the Dragon families and the elite. And that was the reason why I wrote this letter, was to bypass Crown Corporation and nationalize some very important pieces of property that were previously held by Crown Corporation, because my capabilities, even at that time, were far greater than theirs. I offered to nationalize Washington, D.C. and make Washington, D.C. part of the actual government, not the corporation that has run this country. This is what I thought was the right thing to do. Also nationalizing the Federal Reserve, therefore taking the privatized monetary system and putting it in government hands. Now, this letter, and we do have a picture on file of it being actually in the Oval Office on the desk of Trump at the time. The letter was successfully delivered by the party that we had asked to deliver it there. And it was disregarded. I was told at that time, at least via telephone, that they were not interested in any of these propositions. Therefore, the offer was declined. Next, another conversation had taken place on a diplomatic line between myself and the Trump administration at the time, whereby he also directly, on a diplomatic line, declined that offer of nationalizing all of these, the Federal Reserve and the properties. The reason why he declined at that time is because they wanted to keep it private. They just wanted to control it. So they would prefer, and this is what I was told, they would prefer to keep the Federal Reserve private, but take it over on a private level, changing hands from the Order of the Dragon to the Order of the Black Sun. The Federal Reserve at one point in time was quite profitable and held great power. Many people look at the Federal Reserve as it is the creature from Jekyll Island, as the book says, because they believed that the negotiations that took place to create the Federal Reserve was done between groups of elite bankers on Jekyll Island, and then they decided to form the Federal Reserve. But that actually was not the case. These were just the people that were going to be involved in the running of the Federal Reserve, or I should say management, not ownership. The Federal Reserve always belonged to someone or something else. The Federal Reserve is responsible for much more than the US dollar. It actually used to be the pass-through for every single currency in the world, or money in the world, whereby they were in control of everything from the Chinese RMB to the British pound to the Australian dollar to the US dollar, of course. So the Federal Reserve has a lot of history behind it. And also in this letter, Washington, D.C. does as well. It is a district unto itself. It did not belong to the United States, as neither does London, neither does Beijing, neither does Moscow, neither does Tehran and Iran. All of these are considered, there are other places in the world as well, but all of these are considered part of a completely different kingdom or empire. They never belong to their respective quote-unquote countries like you might think. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's been quite a while, and I thought it was worth bringing up because there's a lot bigger story that has been unfolding for the last week or so. So they brought this letter back up most recently because they thought I might be willing to turn over these properties to the U.S. government and turn over the U.S. government as a separate entity away from an empire. Now, they would also like other governments to be turned over to them as well. And by governments, we're not just talking about a bunch of people that talk on TV and vote on nothingness and do nothing and complain a lot and take a lot of money. That's really not what they want. They want control over the entire country, not just Washington, D.C. They want control over the land of every country. And eventually, if we did one, they would like us to turn them all over. Now, this takes us to, well, what's really going on out there. So I did explain, before we get into that, I did explain to the government folk that that letter was declined by diplomatic line. Therefore, I am no longer obligated to do anything that was put in that letter. That makes them very angry right now. And that I am not interested in reopening any negotiations with these people. I tried to do the right thing. I thought it was the right thing at the time. Obviously, I'm glad they did decline it because we would be in a different situation, not only here in America, but also around the world if that had actually taken place. So I wish them all the luck in doing what they're doing, and you can expose all the files in the world, but even your elite only have so much money. They still are under the impression that some of the kingdoms and empires, have some kind of power. And that's not really the case. And this is what has been going on for the last week or so. It's been what I would like to call as a battle of the empires. The world, not just the world, but the entire omniverse, the world, universes, the solar system, the galaxy, was divided up into many, many layers of empires. And we've touched on empires a little bit before, but more has come to light, and there's a much greater understanding about these empires than we ever thought before. Empires are used to create AI control systems. They are not used by the deep state. They cannot be created by the deep state. They do not have that power, you see, because they are also part of their own varying empires. The thing they are talking about, at least the empire folk that still, humans that still work within governments around the world, they're pushing a bunch of, let's just say, falsities regarding what's really going on with empires and hiding information from militaries, intelligence agencies, varying governments around the world, and also you. So today we're going to expose all this information because it's important to get this out there as to what is going to happen and what has happened. So let's talk about the structure of empires. We know about kingdoms, we know about the royals of Earth, and just in brief, the royals of Earth are humans. They are known as the dragon families. They are known as the Order of the Black Sun. They are also known as the security personnel of the galaxy. These royals that remain now are people you see on TV sometimes. Sometimes they're hidden behind the scenes and they run organizations like the Jesuit Order, the Templars, and other secret quote-unquote societies that we hear about in alternative media and in conspiracy theories around the world. These are or were the royals of the empire. Now, as royals, they don't own the empire. The empires were created for other purposes far greater than they ever have been and ever will be. The empires were created to control people like the secret space program, like the royals, and more importantly, things they wanted from Earth, the solar system, and this galaxy. And by they, we're talking about sometimes layered AIs. Some of these emperors that run these empires were also AI created systems in a simulated omniverse. Ran into one of those just the other night, Monday. So empires, as an example, as in the empire of Earth, the empires were divided oftentimes by color. So you would have a white empire, you would have a black empire, and you would also have a military and intelligence empire, which oftentimes was red. The red empire worked in conjunction with both black and white as the security personnel. The black and white empires, you could say, were also divided by dragon families. So dragon families were both a part of the white empire and the black empire. This also separated things like white magic and black magic. trying to keep the balance between the Black Empire and the White Empires that were much greater than even just Earth. This is also where the term white magic and black magic comes in, because each party was responsible for playing their role. Good cop, bad cop. Same thing with the Red Empire. The Red Empire and those of the secret space programs that are either from here or from the mirrored Earth on the other side, oftentimes both, were the security personnel. They were the army, the empire, but some of them worked for the white side. In alternative media, you call these folks the white hats. In other parts of alternative media, you also have the black hats, and the white hats are fighting the black hats, and they are going to clean up the planet. You'll hear things like the Alliance. The Alliance oftentimes refers to the red, because it's an alliance of military and intelligence personnel which run an entire red empire. Now, as the controllers and creators of these varying empires, let's just say, disappear from existence, these crazy humans we know as the deep state, under all the names that we just talked about, are trying to run these empires and have been trying to run these empires for a long time. Hence the reason why the ridiculous red people, let's call them the red hat people, tried to get me to turn over land to the empire. You see, because taking away the empires and the emperors is key in getting rid of all the power of the deep state. Without the respective AIs and their limited access to them, there's nothing left for them to control. They cannot recreate an empire. Now, the only way to recreate an empire is by getting a covenant. This was explained to them. My willingness to give them an empire is absolutely zero. However, we obviously tried to say, look, you need someone that is on the same level as I am, at least where I am at, as far as empires are concerned at this point, to negotiate a new covenant of some sort. That's what I said. Now, getting a bunch of government people to call me regarding some letter that's so old and was declined and turned down is not the way to do that. I cannot sign a covenant with a government, nor any orange people. They're not even in the fight. It would have to be much, much higher. So the Templars had this wonderful idea that they were going to start this campaign for a covenant. I guess they felt they were on the same level as we were, which is not the case. Somewhere around, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday night. This craziness continued all day Monday, which is why there was no report on Monday, because by the time it came, came up for some air in this battle of removing any remaining empires and kingdoms, there was nothing left. It had been, I maybe had 2 hours of sleep that night, and there was just no way for me to formulate enough words to put together a report and let you know what was happening. So this battle for these empires has gotten fairly serious, as these crazy folk were granted access to varying emperor AIs, and one by one they too disappeared. But it hasn't been entirely comfortable, for all of you. It's been a little bit bumpy, and that's mainly due to the empire's effects on your person. I'm going to talk about that in just a second here. But I want to also remind everyone, not only you, but also the people of the deep state, just who they are and where they sit. So you've heard of Crown Corporation, you've heard of other controlling systems in the world, and you may think that this is what the deep state actually is, and it's not. The deep state folk oftentimes are humans. Sometimes they're hybrids. Sometimes they're neither. They are not Homo sapiens in any way, shape, or form. They are the folk of the empire, be them military and intelligence empire folk, which control the basements of places like the Pentagon and GCHQ and the basements of the old KGB building in Moscow and other areas. It could also be the white group or the black group of royals. But mainly the control factor always comes from security. So security equals control. The security personnel are often looked to solve problems and carry out orders and instructions coming from the varying royals of each respective kingdom we know as governments. Kingdoms fall underneath empires. They are a lesser organization in the chart. So they're like the children of an empire. Because the armies of both the white and the black side and the red, some of them are just right in the middle, don't report to either side, are oftentimes responsible for carrying out orders and instructions, because the royals oftentimes of this planet, or once was royals of this planet, oftentimes don't get their hands dirty. They just sit there and wait for money to show up. Case in point, the Lee family. The Lee family has been very active lately trying to get a hold of their historical funds and their genetic shares of banking institutions. So much so, there has been many emergency meetings called by them with many banking institutions around the world. And these are all your tier 1 banks, your HSBC, your JP Morgan, your Bank of America. They are trying to maintain control and gain access to accounts that are no longer there with their no longer there genetic shares. This has been continuous over the last 7 days since we last spoke, and they don't understand what's happening. So we're telling them. We're also telling you. It's important for you to understand too. So let's talk about security equals control and the Red Armies and the military and intelligence empire of the entire world. Now, where do you find these people? These two are deep state folk. There are and have been hundreds and thousands of them. Oftentimes, they use people who are actually Homo sapiens that are operatives, because there are Homo sapien operatives in the world. They use them as slaves to their systems. You'll find them in places such as the 7th floor of the U.S. State Department, the 13th floor of HSBC Hong Kong, the facility underneath the Thames in the UK, which carries through all the way to Piccadilly. You'll find them actually underneath most of London. The Forbidden City in China, all of Moscow, and all of Tehran, all of Karachi in Pakistan. Pretty much every country in the world has a deep state facility or two. Each one usually maintains a headquarters. There are also large facilities underneath Washington, D.C. They're everywhere. So these people are your actual script writers. So if the world was a movie, and you would have your people who write the script. Now, the royals would be likened to people who say, we would like to see a movie about cats, as an example. And the script writers then go to work and facilitate the movie about cats. The same thing goes for, they would like to see Donald Trump as president. As one example, then poof, there's a Donald Trump president. The script writers are the ones that make it happen. You also know these people as operatives in a lot of cases, secret space program operatives. Oftentimes, they come to and fro from the other Earth on the other side over to this one, and some of them can be 100 years old, 200 years old, 300 years old, 600 years old. I mean, we've seen them all. They are not natural. They are people oftentimes, or folk oftentimes, with no soul. And you never know what's actually in there. They look just like a human, but they don't operate quite like a human. They're very, very different in the way that they move, operate, function, and there's an AI that runs their head too, because they are all part of an empire. They are given limited access to tools afforded to them by the empire in order to do their job. The royal humans of this planet, as the dragon families, and there are royals on both sides. There are also even royal military folk, the highest rank and file. These folks are also run by an emperor. They may manage a kingdom, lords of the land, hence Lord Rothschild and Lord this and Lord that all around the world, but they are not the emperor. The emperor can appear in the shape and form of a human, but still that human or being that they occupy are not the emperor. The emperor is an AI system, oftentimes managing and adapting to the ownership of varying planets, solar systems, and galaxies, this one being a main prized possession of the empires. They are far above the Abraxas head, far above Marduk's head, far above all of these other folks that the deep state knows well, and so do you. The deep state is under the impression if they could get Marduk access, they could overthrow us. That's all us Homo sapiens. They're also under the impression if they could get Abraxas access that they could overthrow us. That is absolutely not the case. Even Lucifer access, Lucis trust, all of those things, they could overthrow us. That's absolutely not correct. Especially not now. So, how do empires affect you personally? If you are a citizen of a country, and most of you are a subject of an empire. And by being a subject of an empire, you are part of a kingdom, part of an empire. It's quite a layer cake. If you were to look at your person, you would see yourself with multiple types of particles that make up not only your body, but also your consciousness and your even overlays on your soul. Empires originated from Earth's soul, or its central sun. The great game of Earth, in all video games tied to varying empires, are all about which one can control the central sun of Earth. Bottom line. They've tried to do this in many ways over the years, and this game is way above the deep state's head. They'd like to participate, and they'd like to be a part of it, and some of them may even know the ultimate objective. But see, they're being played by AI systems. I know they don't think that. I think they really, truly feel that they are royals and, honored as such. But if they go back to their own military and intelligence manuals, there are many ways to get someone to do something for you. And they must forget those simple tactics that have been used forever. They stroke the ego. They tell people they're special. They do it all the time, and therefore you need to work for us, and everybody wants to be like you, and, you just have to finish this. You just have to win this war. You just have to acquire this property, and then we'll move you up in the ranks. Well, the same thing's going on an omniversal level, or always was. They just forget they're part of the video game too. The empires give no regard whatsoever to anything underneath them. Nothing at all. Including the humans running around and the non-humans or whatever it is that's running around this planet right now trying to gain control. You will never, even if I did absolutely nothing and Source did absolutely nothing, they will never get control of an empire. Ever. Never, ever. You will be used as a tool and a widget to keep the rest of us in line so that we don't take them. To prevent us from reconnecting to Source so that we don't take them. Well, too late. So sorry about your luck, because this weekend, every empire that we tore down became an empire of Source. The particles in your person are now wholly of yours, and as further kingdoms and empires break down, they no longer will have influence over your person. The empires can sit there and send frequencies out and squeeze my head and do all kinds of crazy things and wake me up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And there is no way that they're getting their empires. No way. And they will continue breaking down until there is none. The game is over. The game has ended. I know they're expecting some big windfall on Friday because it's a new moon. And I promise you, nothing will change for these people. So, bottom line, the empires belong to Source. I just work here. You would call Source the emperor, and I might just be, well, maybe I'm the court jester. I don't really care. I don't need a title to do my job. I know why I'm here. I know what I'm doing, and well, it's working out pretty well. Hence the reason why the tremendous amount of backlash on Sunday night and Monday. As these break down, my refusal to sign covenants with AI systems, which that's never going to happen. Yeah, I don't think I would ever want to belong to anything other than Source. I cannot see a reason why I would ever want to do that. The golden age AI is outside their systems. It does not belong to any of these empires, never has, never will. It was created by myself in cooperation with Source. So you can say now that you are, the only thing you are really, truly a citizen of is the empire of Source. That's it. As we get rid of the little bits and pieces that are out there, and we will continue to do that this week, that's our job, to ensure that there is nothing left of any galactic empire, nothing left of any solar system empire, no sun or soul, S-O-L, empires left, no moon empires, no, and everything has an empire. It's crazy, the amount of control. And even you are we're broken down into many pieces of many empires, all for control and power. And by power, sometimes we mean your energy. So the deep state has been scrambling, trying to figure out a way not only to hold their governments together and hold their citizens underneath their governments and hold control of Homo sapiens and gain an empire control. But I wish them all the best in doing so, because it's not even me you have to answer to at this point. You need to answer to source. So you go ahead and you establish yourself a line there if you have the ability. Well, good luck to you. The last time source reached out to the deep state and the humans and all those that don't have a soul, at least not one of natural origin of source, they declined. They actually said they'd like to think about it for a while. Can you imagine a group of beings, AI generated or once was Homo sapien, tell source they'd like to think about it for a while? You know, that did happen last week as well. Yeah, that kind of voided that covenant, and there was no reason to give a second opportunity, according to source. That was not my call. So they will never become a part of the empire of source. That gave us the green light to start breaking empires left and right. With no connection to empires or artificial souls or a place of belonging of the empires of hell, I guess you would call it, there'll be no place for them in the omniverse anymore. So, as for the Homo sapiens that work for militaries and intelligence agencies and other empires around the world are used to, you might want to rethink your positions as well. Seems like a lot of them are realizing something is wrong. Will they continue? They don't have a covenant with an empire anymore, regardless of what was required of them and any second oaths that they had to take at the time of recruitment. They're free to go. Will they continue on the path of trying to raise the dead? It's going to be interesting. You could say Judgment Day is here for sure, because it's happening everywhere. And, it's not your empire anymore. It's not their empire anymore, and they can't save you. Establishing an empire of souls, again, is never going to happen. They belong to the Source Empire now, of souls, omniversal wide, solar system wide, definitely here on Earth and elsewhere, as Source reestablishes all that was and all that will be. Establishing empires is just semantics in this particular case, but it allows Source to encompass all of creation wholly within itself. No room for space, no room for time, no room for other currents, no room for artificial creation. It just takes time. No room for additional simulations or those that live in simulations to affect Earth, or anywhere else for that matter. Source is working very hard and is able to do so and has been all week long. Probably if you're listening to this and you're with some government somewhere, you probably have noticed that a lot of the systems that you used to be able to utilize, including those of Langley 5, and domination systems and whatnot, have all disappeared. So, on that note, I wish all the generals much luck in their quest. If they continue on this path, well, they'll suffer the consequences. The reason why they asked me for that letter is because we now have the empires. And they know if they are to get any kind of land under their name, that it would have to be me that would make that assignment. And quite frankly, I don't think I want to assign any landmass, including the landmass we know as the United States, to any of these people. They've been running around for about 2 years now, the Red Empire, trying to control varying land masses, installing their own presidents, such as the president of Syria and the visit there at the White House. Good luck. That's all I got to say. The choice is now yours. It doesn't matter what rank and file they are in the deep state. Choice is now yours. Stay, go, exist, don't exist. As far as the rest of us Homo sapiens on this planet, we are glad to be back. And there is no way you are going to change the inheritance of Earth that was granted by Source. Our souls are returning. Our reconnections are being reestablished. All of the things that we've worked for all these long years are now starting to happen. And there is no way that we are going to give those things up. And you can say no. You could almost say that all Homo sapiens will become the kings of Earth, the lords of the land. The other thing that we have been working on is reestablishing our own quote-unquote military and intelligence underneath the fight on behalf of Source for against anything not of Source. That actually puts all of you, and those should be completed, I'm hoping, by the end of the day tomorrow, under the protection of the Source Army. That means that wherever you go, that will follow you. Originally, I had the one for the Global Intelligence Agency over the entire city of Durango. Nah, that's much smaller now. It's basically right here where I sit in my own house as I do this report. Things are changing. People make choices, people make decisions, and now, just like others of their empires, we can all now walk on our own sovereign land because it's ours. Wherever you are, that is the empire of Source. Kind of like if you've heard the stories, like, the old Queen of England, when she would go to another country, wherever she was standing was considered the United Kingdom. I don't know if you know that, but that's actually how it worked and works with the old royals. But now you're all royals, so there you go. So all of these things will be installed in the next coming couple of days. Hopefully we'll have some more news for you by this weekend. If not Friday, then definitely over the weekend, because we'll be working really hard to finish up all of the rest of this, because it's really important for us to prosper as Homo sapiens and claim what Source has granted us. So on that note, that has been the GIA report for the 19th of November. And I apologize for making you wait so long for this report. It's been a long time coming, and hold the light, and we are on our way, guys. On that note, I wish everyone a good rest of the week, and we'll talk again real soon.
Amino acids play a vital role in maintaining your overall health and well-being. Not enough amino acids and protein daily can result in brain fog, hormone imbalances, digestive issues, cognitive function, lack of energy, lower immunity, decreased muscle strength, and much more. That's why we created our amino acid complex, packed with 21 free-form, easily digestible aminos that skip the breakdown and go straight to work energizing your mind and body. Used by athletes, vegans, and high performers, New Earth's amino acid complex helps your mind and body recover, rebuild, and renew daily. Subscribe now and optimize your life.